Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my budget Shadow Paladin Cardfight Vanguard deck profile for January 2019. Figured I'd have this card be the next in line for the budget deck profiles. It was the most requested deck profile to do next. Decided to mix in a bunch of cards from the Strongest Team AL4 booster pack and the trial deck for Ren Suzugamori, just with all the different support. Tried to stick away from the Phantom Blaster Dragon cards and all the triple rares, the ones that basically held most of the value in the whole Shadow Paladin deck, and made more of a focus on the Dark Dictator and some of the other cards in the deck as a whole to work together. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So to start off for the grade 3s, wanted to go for 4 Dark Dictator. Sadly, I was not able to find where I put any of my other ones, sadly. But 4 is the base one that you want to go for, just for the fact that the Dark Dictator came out in the trial deck, one of the most easy accessible grade 3s for the deck. For backup, I have Fiery Knight Loeg in the grade 3 spot for backup. It doesn't have a force marker, but next to other affordable ones, it's the next best one to go for. But ideally, I would like to run 4 Dark Dictator, just for the power plus it has for during your turn. It gets plus 2,000 for each of your rear guards, and the once per turn counterblast 1, call up to 1 grade 2 or less card from your hand to rear, and that unit gets plus 5,000, and then your opponent chooses one of his or her rear guards and retires it. So you have the retire pressure, the build up with your force markers as well, since Shadow Paladins have imaginary gift force, meaning you can either boost up your Vanguard with the power with the force marker or any of the rear guards. Just with the big numbers you can hit with the rears as well, makes Dark Dictator your main go-to unit for your grade 3 Vanguard. And then Loeg just has that when it attacks a Vanguard, it gets plus 3 until the end of that battle for each rear guard. You have more than your opponent, 9,000 if you have 5 and your opponent has 2. So you have just pressure options available to you with him as a backup. But with the 4 Dark Dictator, I would prefer to run Dark Mage, Badkar, or Badhabkar, if that's how you pronounce it. Sorry about that. Just as good backup for the fact that it has a imaginary gift force. And it also has the Vanguard or rear guard once per turn, Soul Blast 1, look at the top card of your deck, call it to rear, or put it into your drop zone. If you call it, that unit gets plus 5,000 until the end of the turn, and at the end of that turn, retire that unit. So you can make full use of basically all those cards at hand, depending on which ones you call, giving it plus 5 as well. Just makes for a great pressure card, even if you call it on rear guard, because you already have your Vanguard circle set up with the proper grade 3 that you wanted. It just helps for those rear card calls for sure. You don't really need to put it in the drop zone for any reason with the standard Shadow Paladins, but even if you call a trigger, it gets the plus 5. Depending on what else you call, you may have some other skills to go off. So very, very helpful just as a backup grade 3. And then for the grade 2s, I run 4 Blaster Darks. Still very, very easy to get this card since you get a full amount of them with 1 trial deck. Great grade 2 for the fact that when it's placed on Vanguard or rear, you can counterblast 1. Your opponent chooses one of his or her rear guards and retires it. And then a once per turn, if your opponent has no rear guards, discard a card from your hand. And this unit gets drive plus 1 until the end of the turn. So you have your pressure with your Vanguard, potentially having Twin Drive. You can get rid of all your opponent's rear guards. Maybe they didn't even call any, and you ride on to Blaster Dark. Meaning all you have to do is the discard 1. You don't even have to use the counterblast for the retire. So very, very beneficial there for sure. So a definite 4 Blaster Dark in the deck, just for the fact that he has such great pressure with being able to retire your opponent's units, and just with the fact that Twin Drive at a grade 2. I also run 4 Cursed Lancer. This card must be called to an open rear when you would call it from your hand, and on rear when placed you can Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets plus 10,000 until the end of the turn. If you have no cards face up in your damage zone, you counter charge 1. So overall, a very, very good card for sure. Even if you call it off of Dark Mage, you don't have to worry about not being able to use its effect, and it's only when called from hand for the open part, so you can easily go through some of the other weaker units on the field if you do end up calling it with Dark Mage. But the counterblast you know, all face down, and then having the ability to countercharge with this card definitely does come in handy if you use a lot of your counterblasts with Blaster Dark and the Dark Dictator. So I liked it at a 4 of, just for the fact that it's also a 10k power, like most of the Force units, like all the grade 2s that we're running in the deck. The 10k power just helps for defense when you have to ride this card on Vanguard as well. It might not have any effects on Vanguard, but still very, very helpful in that sense. And lastly, for the grade 2s, I run 4 Tragic Knight Cathbad. It's the same ability as the Loeg we were using. But as I said, Loeg will most likely be taken out if you have 4 Dark Dictators. But Tragic Knight, when it attacks a Vanguard, this unit gets plus 3,000 to the end of the battle for each of your rear guard if you have more than your opponent. And then 9,000 if you have 5 and your opponent has 2. So just overall good pressure with this card as well. With your force markers, he hits for huge numbers, which definitely do come in handy. And then just having him maybe potentially be called with cards like the Dark Dictator just make it all the much more better for big numbers with, you know, easy rear guards on rear. It doesn't even have a play skill. It's just, you know, as long as you have more rear guards than your opponent, you'll be able to get that power boost up. And that is it for the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. The biggest trick with the grade 1 lineup that I tried out is just the ratio of what I should run compared to the more expensive cards, which were Sharon and Nemain. I didn't want to run them just because in the you know, usual standard deck profile for Shadow Paladins, you run 4 of each. So running any of those numbers definitely made this the most trickiest budget deck profile since they were, you know, so important in the deck. So to start off, we'll go with the easy ones. 4 Blaster Javelin. This card was available in the trial deck, so a very, you know, easy card to get access to, and just, you know, very usable one at that. When placed, if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards, you counterblast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets plus 3,000 until the end of the turn. I do believe it was errated to a different effect, so you'll have the, you know, 1 or less, including this card, obviously, so you have an easier draw effect there. But being the fact that this Blaster Dark and the Dark Dictator do eat up a lot of counterblasts, it just makes Cursed Lancer all the more usable for its countercharge, for sure. And the draw power just helps with consistency, and the +3 with an 11k booster when you go with other units, including Tragic Knight, Cathbad. You could just hit for really, really big numbers that make your opponent throw down a good amount of their hands just to be able to guard in total, depending on what, you know, attack you're going up against. And also just getting triggers is the added bonus with those cards as well, and what you wanted to go for. And then for additional grade 1s, I run 3 Blaster Dagger. I originally didn't really like this card too much in the main deck, but for affordable good grade 1s, I do think it is quite usable. When it attacks or the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, put this unit into your soul. Your opponent chooses one of his or her units and retires it. So being an 8k grade 1 is one super benefit for sure. But I also like that you can basically set up, which you need a lot of soul for your Dark Mage, which it's not placed, it's a once per turn. So as long as you have this on Vanguard or rear, you can make full use of its call effect. But you need soul to use, obviously, so cards like this can definitely help in that situation, just when you need plenty of them to work with for your soul buildup. So I like the 3 Blaster Dagger for the retire benefit and the fact that it can help with your Dark Mage soul that you'll need. And I also run 4 Nightmare Painters. Now, I was debating how many of these cards I wanted to run in the deck. If I wanted to go 4 Blaster Dagger and then drop this card down to 3. You can if you want, but I like it. It helps recycle grade 1 or less cards from your drop zone, which you're not really going to be using for anything else. It's one of place skill. So you'll have this card at 10k power in total on rear guard. Makes for a great booster for sure. And just being able to build up that soul again, a lot easier than investing in actual cards in the field, is another reason why I really did like this card. For the sole reason that your main backup is Dark Mage to your Dark Dictator. If he was a Soul Blast, it would be oh so more important for sure in this deck. But the fact that 1-year grade 3 still does rely on it, and it is a rear guard effect also, makes me definitely like the Soul build-up grade 1s in the deck. And lastly, for the grade 1s, I run 2 Invest Falcon. When it boosts, if you have another grade 1 or less rear guard, you may have this unit gets plus 5,000 until the end of the battle. If you do, retire this unit at the end of that battle. So it's just easy power boost. Putting it into the drop zone also just gives you resources for your grade 1s to use. So all the more helpful there in that sense, just as a good backup for sure. And that is it for the grade 1s. We'll now move on to the grade 0s. For your starter, full bow, it's, I say this in all the videos, just generic. Roll upon, draw a card, starter for all the standard deck profiles. And then for the triggers, I decided to stick with the 8 critical, so 4 Death Feather Eagle and 4 Darkside Trumpeter. The standard lineup for Shadow Paladins, and I actually have the 4 Dark Shield Maclear, because what I double-checked with a lot of the perfect cards is just the affordable price, and Maclears are actually quite budget, so if you have the means to get them, definitely do, just because I prefer it and not taking up the grade 1 spot. If you don't have Maclears, you can obviously just put in, the generic draw trigger and then take out either maybe 2 of the Nightmare Painters and 2 of the Invest Falcon for the Sentinels that we got in the Ren Suzugimori trial deck, and then, like I said, just put the generic draws in for this card. And lastly, for Abyss Healer, just for the heal trigger for Shadow Paladins to finish up the trigger lineup. But other than that, that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Once again, still taking requests on what you would like the next budget deck profile to be. But until then, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Qualia out.